suits ready. Also, Ukraine has launched a new counter-offensive to push back some of the advances Russia made over the summer. We'll tell you all about it. So US President Donald Trump is moving to retake control of Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, and he says the reason is China. We told you this last night. Today, China has issued a warning, and the Taliban is saying Bagram is ours. With Trump linking Bagram to China's nuclear ambitions, the air base is once again at the center of a geopolitical storm, caught between Washington, Kabul and Beijing. Let's break it down for you. First, hear what Trump had to say on Thursday.
They just went through the Afghanistan total disaster for no reason whatsoever. We're going to leave Afghanistan, but we're going to leave it with strength and dignity. And we're going to keep Bagram, the big air base, one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We're trying to get it back, by the way. Okay, that could be a little breaking news. We're trying to get it back because they need things from us. We want that base back. But one of the reasons we want the base is, as you know, it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons.
On Friday, then, China responded, calling it unpopular to hype tensions in Afghanistan. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said that China respects Afghan sovereignty and called on parties to, quote-unquote, play a constructive role in promoting regional peace and stability. Analysts say that the facility Trump likely referred to is China's Lop-Nur nuclear test range, located in Xinjiang. The flight test distance from Lop-Nur to Bagram is 2,000 kilometers, which a modern Chinese fighter jet could cover in about an hour. But experts also warn that many of China's nuclear sites lie farther inland, providing greater protection from airstrikes. Also, Trump's comments come 4 years after America's chaotic withdrawal, which left Bagram in Taliban's hands. Remember, Bagram, just 44 kilometers north of Kabul, was the largest US base in Afghanistan and the hub of America's 20-year war. In 2021, US and NATO forces pulled out, as you remember, chaotically, under former President Joe Biden. Now, 4 years later, Trump wants it back, calling the withdrawal a total disaster. He says he wants Bagram back, but Afghanistan says no. Kabul is not ready for any US presence and rejects the need for a foreign base. Afghan Foreign Ministry official Zakir Jalal said on X, and I'm quoting here, Afghanistan and the United States need to engage without any US military presence. The Taliban, now in control, has pushed back but left the door open for political and economic engagement with the United States. Taliban reportedly don't see foreign troops ever returning. Other Taliban voices have been more forceful, reminding Washington, Bagram is Afghanistan. But Trump, he argues that the base is vital to America because of China. In fact, during his first cabinet meeting after taking office, he said that he planned to retain control of Bagram and station a small US force there. He had said then, and I'm quoting again, we're going to have Bagram Air Base, one of the biggest air bases in the world. It shouldn't come as a surprise. Trump has suggested before that China had taken over the base. But Beijing denies this and has said that it has no military bases in Central Asia. Beijing has also warned that it would firmly oppose any action that undermines its sovereignty and security. But Trump has pushed for control of the base because he claims that it's strategic to America's security and interests. Due to its Chinese nuclear missile facilities, and for US, Bagram also holds symbolic value. Remember, before 2021, Bagram was the main base for US forces post 9/11. Built by the Soviets in the 1950s, it was America's strongest foothold in the region. Bagram base has seen America host counter-terrorism operations, drone missions as well as troop deployments. Since 2021, the base has seen deadly attacks, the collapse of Afghan forces and the Taliban's rapid return to power. The Biden administration defended the 2021 withdrawal as the largest non-combatant evacuation in US history, moving over 124,000 people to safety. That's what they say. But critics, Trump being chief among them, have argued that abandoning Bagram Air Base gave up a strategic asset against China. Trump has continued to highlight Bagram's strategic value, claiming it's just an hour from nuclear sites in Xinjiang's Hami region. But still, analysts warn that reclaiming Bagram could increase US-China tensions. The base's fall allowed the Taliban to quickly consolidate control over Afghanistan. For now, Taliban officials say no foreign troops will return. For now, Bagram is back in the spotlight. Will the US push succeed? We'll have to wait and watch. And the battle for Gaza City is exploding into chaos. Israeli forces push deeper as thousands of Palestinians flee, but heavy losses shake Israel's own ranks. And tonight, Benjamin Netanyahu's promise of a quick win looks shattered under the weight of blood, doubt and division. Take a look.
Columns of smoke rise above Gaza City as tens of thousands of Palestinians scramble to escape. Streets once alive are now littered with rubble. Homes blown open, families clutching what little they can carry. Israeli tanks thunder forward, grinding through shattered neighborhoods in what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed would be a swift, decisive push.
The situation is really bad. All night long, the tank was firing shells. There is no one left. Take a look at the camp and see the state of it. Very bad state. We have children, we have women, we have girls.
The bombing is getting closer, shelling and F-16 planes that are striking here and there, on the houses, on the seaside, and the battleships in the sea were hitting from all directions. Even the bullets and quadcopters are striking in a random and crazy way.
But the cost is mounting, and so is dissent inside Israel's own war machine. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed 4 soldiers were killed in fierce combat in southern Gaza. Another attack at the Jordan West Bank crossing left 2 more Israeli soldiers dead. For a military already stretched, these blows are devastating. Behind the scenes, the battlefield is just as fractured. A deep rift has opened between Netanyahu's political ambitions and the military's grim reality. The Prime Minister, desperate for a quick achievement to secure his legacy, has no viable plan to win while keeping hostages safe. In a rare act of public defiance, the IDF Chief of Staff is deliberately slowing down the operation, a calculated risk to reduce casualties. Hamas is vowing resistance. The Al-Qassam brigades warn Gaza City will become a graveyard for Israeli soldiers, saying their fighters are dug in, ready to fight street by street, house by house. The stakes could not be higher. Israel seeks to break Hamas militarily, yet the Palestinian death toll has already crossed 65,000, a staggering figure that fuels outrage across the Arab world and beyond. With no clear plan for victory, no roadmap for hostages' release, and an army chief pulling in the opposite direction, Netanyahu's quick win is slipping into a grinding, bloody quagmire. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Do you want to be a British spy? Well, the hunt is on for the next 007, this time in the digital shadows. Britain's legendary MI6 turns to the dark web, inviting would-be spies to play for real. From Moscow to Tehran, anyone with secrets is now just one click away from the Secret Service. Watch this next story to know if you are eligible to become a spy for the UK government.
The world's oldest spy agency just rewrote the rulebook. Britain's MI6, the force behind the myth and muscle of James Bond, has gone cyber, launching silent courier on the dark web to recruit a new breed of global intelligence agents. The target list reads like a thriller: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. If you hold state secrets, the British want to hear from you. No more park benches, dead drops, or mysterious briefcases. This is a digital call to arms. The portal is hidden, encrypted, and designed for one purpose: access. For the first time, citizens inside authoritarian regimes can bypass surveillance and reach British intelligence with a click. Safe, anonymous, untouchable. UK government says that it is trying to keep pace with a changing world, and the aim is to keep the country a step ahead of its adversaries. The hunt for the next 007 is no longer about a single agent. It's about building a global network of silent shadows, ordinary people carrying extraordinary secrets. The new Bond won't step out of a sports car. He or she may already be typing in an encrypted chat room right now.
And our next story is from Bangladesh, where an Islamist group in Bangladesh has called for a massive rally in Dhaka this November. Their demand that the Ahmadiyya community be declared non-Muslim by the state. The group's Secretary General Muhyiddin Rabbani has made it clear in a recent interview to a local news outlet. He said that the rally's goal is to push political parties to include this demand in their manifestos ahead of the upcoming general election. The Ahmadiyya community's roots in Bangladesh stretch back more than a century, originating with Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, who is the founder of the Ahmadiyya faith. The movement slowly made its way to Bangladesh. It was in 1902 that active preaching first began here, through the efforts of a local cleric. But by 1912, the Ahmadiyya movement gained real momentum, laying the foundation for what we see today. But why this anger against the Ahmadiyyas? Ahmadiyya's recognition of Ahmad as a prophet has been characterized as heretical by mainstream Muslims, who believe that Prophet Muhammad was the final prophet. Today, the Ahmadiyya community in Bangladesh is significant, with an estimated 16,500 Ahmadis spread across the country. The community is guided by 65 current serving preachers. Despite facing adversity, the community remains resilient. In recent years, the Ahmadiyya community in Bangladesh has been dealing with increasing violence, which highlights the ongoing struggles faced by religious minorities in the country. The most recent attack happened last year in Ahmednagar 2024. One person killed, 22 others injured. On top of that, several homes burnt down and the community's mosque vandalized. A similar attack took place last year as well, during the Ahmadiyya community's annual conference, also in Ahmednagar. Over 100 homes destroyed and the unrest escalated further. Going back a bit further, in 2019, things turned violent again when 50 Ahmadis were injured during a protest against an Ahmadiyya conference. The attackers looted and torched homes and businesses, leaving many families devastated. And in 2018, in Jamalpur, a brutal armed attack left 22 Ahmadis injured. It's a constant reminder of just how vulnerable the community really is. Despite all this, the Ahmadiyya community remains strong, continuing to call for protection and justice in the face of these mounting challenges. All right, also now a quick look at what we have lined up for you on the show going forward. In a candid new excerpt from her upcoming memoir, Kamala Harris reveals how she ultimately decided that it was too risky to have a black woman and a gay man on the same ticket. We'll tell you all about it. As US President Donald Trump wages war on fentanyl, cocaine is making a deadly comeback. Stay tuned for that report. And did you know that Earth has something called a quasi moon? We'll tell you about it. Our next story is about Ukraine. It has launched a new counter-offensive to push back some of the advances Russia made over the summer. The counter-offensive was announced by President Vladimir Zelensky on Thursday, who called the operation an important success after months of battlefield setbacks. Already, Ukrainian troops have reclaimed 160 square kilometers of land near the eastern coal mining town of Dobropilya, where Russia pierced Ukraine's defenses in August. In images from Thursday, the Ukrainian president was seen meeting with soldiers and commanders reportedly in the eastern Donetsk region, where Ukrainian forces are engaging in their fiercest battles with Russia. Russia, which has been chipping away at Ukrainian territory for months, did not immediately comment on Ukraine's claims, but announced that more than 700,000 of its soldiers are fighting on the front line. As far as diplomacy is concerned, after meeting troops in the eastern Donetsk region on Thursday, Zelensky said his army is achieving results in the ongoing counteroffensive. He said Ukrainian forces had cleared Russian troops from an additional 170 square kilometers of land, but had not yet formally taken control of the territory. Zelensky did not say when Ukrainian troops made these gains, but claimed Russia had suffered losses. He added that Ukraine is rightly defending its positions. Deep State, an online battlefield tracker linked to the Ukrainian army, showed Russian troops made rapid advances near the Dobropilya last month, but some of their gains had evaporated in recent weeks. Ukraine and its Western allies say Russian troops are suffering huge losses for comparatively small territorial gains, leaving towns and villages destroyed in their wake. With little hope of Ukraine joining NATO anytime soon, Western allies are backing a new strategy, investing billions in Ukraine's homegrown weapons industry. The goal? To help Ukraine defend itself against Moscow. Now, and eventually share advanced military technology like drones and missiles with Europe and the US. One of the latest innovations is a quadcopter drone that can reportedly evade Russian jamming, fly over 20 kilometers and drop 6 kilograms of guided explosives on tanks and other high-value targets. Russian soldiers, after a fearsome, which in Slavic folklore are called Baba Yaga, its Ukrainian developer calls it the R-34, a drone that hits its target with the precision of a sniper rifle.
There's no drones we know that can stand against the EV machines and fly that far right now in this moment. This is why this is unique.
Now, Donald Trump has expressed mounting frustration with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin for not halting the war. All efforts to end this war have fallen apart in recent months. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Russia says it is ready to seek a compromise on Ukraine, as long as its security interests and rights of Russian-speaking people in Ukraine are guaranteed. Lavrov also stressed that Russia is willing to maintain current dialogue with the United States, including talks between heads of state, foreign ministers and other communication channels. A willingness, he says, appears to be shared by Washington. Now, just last week, Russia announced peace talks were on pause. Trump, who has been seeking to broker an end to the war, said on Thursday that he is disappointed in Putin's apparent refusal to accept a peace deal. He said, and I'm quoting here, he's let me down, he's really let me down. Trump said at a press conference with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London. Trump promised to end the war quickly after taking office in January, but has failed to extract concessions from the Kremlin despite a landmark summit with Putin in Alaska. Russia accuses European countries of frustrating the peace process, but Kyiv and its European allies say Putin is deliberately stalling to buy time and seize more Ukrainian territory. Russia, which currently occupies around a fifth of Ukraine, accelerated its advances over the summer and has indicated it will achieve its war goals via military means if a peace deal is not possible. Remember, Moscow claims 5 Ukrainian regions as its own, including Crimea, which it annexed in 2014. And in a candid new excerpt from her upcoming memoir, Kamala Harris reveals that she once considered Pete Buttigieg as her top choice for vice president in the 2024 race. But she writes, after a lot of thought, I ultimately decided it was too risky to have a black woman and a gay man on the same ticket. Harris shared her reflections in her memoir, 107 Days, explaining that in the political landscape in 2024, it was already asking a lot of voters to accept her as a black woman and a woman married to a Jewish man. She further added that adding a gay man might put too much at stake. In her excerpts of her memoir obtained by several media outlets, Harris wrote that she believed the stakes were too high and ultimately chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate instead. Harris praised Buttigieg's sincerity and his ability to communicate liberal ideas in ways that could appeal to conservatives. However, she said that Buttigieg did not discuss the reasons behind her decision. In an interview to a different outlet, Buttigieg responded to Harris's comments, saying that he was surprised by her reasoning. He, who had previously been re-elected as mayor of South Bend in Indiana, said that his political experience has shown those results. He further argued that categories are what matter to voters and also emphasized that voters care more about what candidates can do for them than about identity politics. Harris's memoir, which is set to release next Tuesday, provides a behind-the-scenes look at her brief presidential campaign and decision-making process, offering readers an insight into the challenges she faced in navigating a complex political landscape. 7 wars. That's what Donald Trump says he's ended. Not 1, not 2, but 7. Standing shoulder to shoulder with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Chequers, Trump told reporters that he has solved 7 wars. Wars that couldn't be negotiated or ended. Trump's claims were tall and bold, but in politics, as you know, bold doesn't always mean accurate. These claims came during his high-profile joint press conference in the UK. Trump, while wrapping up his 3-day state visit, where he was received with complete royal treatment, it wasn't tea with King Charles that made headlines, it was this claim. Well, it seems Trump's peace record might have just taken a detour straight into the Balkans. He referred to Armenia as Albania, while claiming to have resolved a conflict with Azerbaijan that never involved the Balkan nation. The gaffe in England came as Trump touted his record as a peacemaker. Now, just to be clear, there's no real issue between Armenia and Albania. Both nations are about 3,000 kilometers apart. No issue between Azerbaijan and Albania either. So while Trump's diplomacy might have been on point, his geography not so much. Trump also said that he did not know former British ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, who was fired last week after his links with convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein surfaced. Trump claimed not to know Mandelson despite the latter being the UK's ambassador to the United States and also being at the White House several times. In May this year, Mandelson was photographed standing next to Trump in the Oval Office when the US and UK announced a trade framework. Another unforgettable moment from Donald Trump came during a speech in the Oval Office where he casually declared that nobody has ever heard of Lesotho. Trump was addressing what he called wasteful expenditure, but here's the thing, Lesotho is actually pretty involved in US trade. In 2024 alone, the two countries traded goods worth a whopping $240 million. I'd argue that's a lot of money for a nobody. From South Asia to the Middle East, Africa to Eastern Europe, Trump has painted himself as the ultimate peacemaker. So what's the story behind those so-called 7 wars? Since Trump took office in January, the United States has been involved in 5 ceasefires or peace agreements, though not all parties involved credit the US for these agreements. Let's go one by one though. First, the claim of a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, not Albania. On the 8th of August, Trump signed the deal at the White House and both leaders praised his role in ending a decades-long conflict. But while the ceremony certainly took place, the reality is this conflict wasn't solved overnight. The deal, which was part of a broader, long-standing diplomatic push, with Russia and Turkey playing major roles alongside the United States. Next, Trump posted on social media about a peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda on the 20th of June. He credited Secretary of State Marco Rubio. On the 23rd of June, Trump claimed a ceasefire between Iran and Israel after the US joined Israel in bombing Iranian nuclear sites. Trump also touted a ceasefire between India and Pakistan in May following intense military confrontations along their border. While a ceasefire did occur, once again, India has categorically denied any US intervention in this. On the 28th of July, Trump claimed that leaders of Cambodia and Thailand agreed to a ceasefire after 5 deadly days of fighting, but news outlets reported Trump urged them to negotiate a ceasefire. Yes, he did, or else trade deals with governments would stall. Trump's 7 wars also seem to include the Ethiopia-Egypt conflict over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. While the dispute was ongoing during Trump's first term, it's important to note there was no formal war nor a peace agreement signed. The other cited peace incident by Trump is Serbia and Kosovo. In September 2020, Trump announced Serbia and Kosovo agreed to economic normalization, but news outlets continue to report the tense relations persist 5 years on. Serbia considers Kosovo part of its territory long after Kosovo declared independence in 2008. So while Trump's 7 wars claim may sound impressive, a closer look reveals a mix of overstatements, misunderstandings, gaffes, and ongoing conflicts. At least 11 people are feared dead in 2 blasts in Pakistan's Balochistan province. In both cases, the Balochistan Liberation Army militant group has claimed responsibility. A $400 million railway line project from a key mine is believed to have been the target. The first strike came on Thursday night. A suicide bomber rammed an explosive-laden car into a convoy of paramilitary soldiers near the Iran border. 5 people were killed, 3 of them Pakistan troops. 6 laborers were killed in another explosion near the Afghan border crossing. This surge in violence comes as Islamabad pushes ahead with new mega projects in Balochistan. The government has earmarked $390 million to build rail tracks from the Rekodi copper and gold mines. The project will not only unlock one of the world's largest undeveloped copper-gold deposits, but also catalyze job creation, infrastructure development, and long-term socio-economic uplift across the region. Analysts believe the attacks were meant to disrupt all of these projects. Militancy has been rising in mineral-rich Balochistan, which sits on the border with Afghanistan and Iran. It has been met with a sweeping counter-terrorism crackdown. And a deadly new front has opened in the relentless war on terror. Deep within the unforgiving forests of Jammu and Kashmir, a new threat is emerging. terrorists are building hardened underground bunkers. WION's Idris Lone reports from Srinagar on how India's security forces are not only fighting back, deploying a high-tech arsenal to hunt down in the shadows. Take a look.
The battlefield in Kashmir is changing fast. Terrorists under mounting pressure, they're no longer hiding in homes or villages. They are burrowing into the earth, carving out concrete bunkers deep within dense forest and along the rugged Pir Panjal range. These fortified underground shelters are designed for survival, secrecy, and long wars. Forces are striking back hard. In South Kashmir's Kulgam district, an intense encounter in Gudar ended with a terrorist hideout blown apart, tucked inside a thickly forested mountain slope. In other similar anti-terrorist operation, security forces have unearthed rations, gas stoves, utensils, weapons, ammunition. Clearly, the terrorists were preparing for long stays away from civilian eyes. This shift shows how cornered they are. With dwindling local support and intensified crackdowns, Pakistan-backed terrorists are being pushed out of towns and into the wilderness. The discoveries of fresh supplies and ammunition prove that this is a long-term fight. But with every hideout that crumbles, the forces are gaining ground, ensuring that there is no place left to hide. The terrorist groups have now shifted to the dense forest areas we've seen in the Pir Panjal range and in also South Kashmir's various districts, that multiple hideouts have been busted by security forces in the recent times. Some of them were concrete bunkers, which poses a new challenge for the security forces working in Jammu and Kashmir. With video journalist Feroz, Idris Lone for WION World is One.
Now, next up, we track India's evolving ties with the United States and the European Union. Both the US and EU worry about Russia's war in Ukraine, but their approach to India's purchase of Russian oil is diverging. The US recently hit India with steep tariffs, a cumulative 50%, which is among the highest for any of America's trade partners. This was a direct response to India buying Russian crude oil. The Trump administration has continuously criticized India's trade practices, calling the bilateral relationship very one-sided. Despite these actions, Trump has softened his tone in recent weeks. He has done so by expressing friendship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and even wishing him a happy birthday. Recently, this duality reflects a strategic shift where Trump seeks to maintain a rapport with the Indian leader while pressuring its allies to take a stronger stance against India and China. The US has directly pressured the European Union to impose harsher measures on India. Trump's administration has urged the EU and G7 nations to levy meaningful tariffs on Indian and Chinese imports, arguing that their purchase of Russian oil is funding the war. However, the EU is taking a different path. It's focused on diplomacy and partnership. The EU sees India as a key player and a moderating voice in global forums. That's why the EU is working on a big trade deal with India. It's not just about trade. The EU wants stronger defense ties too. Europe stands to gain significantly as India looks to diversify its defense tech. Germany and France are leading this charge. Germany plans to double its trade with India, while France has repeatedly highlighted shared security goals. Unlike the US and EU favors engagement with India, it wants to avoid extra tariffs and build long-term cooperation. This shows a clear split in how the West handles India amid global tensions. As the UK rolled out the royal pomp and pageantry to host US President Donald Trump for a royal banquet at Windsor Castle, top names from the UK and US government and leaders of tech giants joined in. But one name was missing from the list: London's Mayor Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan's name was not on the 160-strong guest list. The London Mayor has been critical of the US President, and so has been Trump, who called Sadiq Khan nasty in the past. Shortly after wrapping up his 3-day state visit, Trump proclaimed proudly that he didn't want the London mayor to attend the banquet, even though he wanted to be there.
What do you think about the fact that you attend an event in England, a state visit, spectacular, right, and yet the Mayor of London can't be there?
The Mayor of London, Mayor Khan, has done a terrible job. And on immigration, he's a disaster. No, I asked that he not be there. He wanted to be there, as I understand. I didn't want him. I've not liked him for a long time.
Now, tech giants and industry leaders dominated the guest list of the state banquet, which witnessed a lavish show of British royalty. Guests were seated along a 47-meter-long table in St. George's Hall, which itself took over a week to set up and decorate. 139 candles, nearly 1,500 pieces of cutlery and hand-picked seasonal blooms from the gardens at Buckingham Palace adorned the table. With such elaborate arrangements, there's hardly an opportunity for guests to talk to their opposite number across the table. This is what makes the seating arrangement all the more important. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, sat to Trump's right, while King Charles sat to his left. On the other hand, Melania had the Prince of Wales, Prince William, seated to her right and Queen Camilla to her left. Some of the other big names in attendance included Press Baron Rupert Murdoch, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, US Envoy Steve Witkoff, Ambassador-designate to India Sergio Gore, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and tech leaders like Sam Altman, Jensen Huang, Tim Cook and Satya Nadella. Besides an elaborate menu written in French, the guests had a generous wine list consisting of some of the finest English sparkling wine, vintage champagne among others. After dinner, drinks included a 1945 vintage port in honor of Trump having been the 45th US president. There was a 1912 cognac from the birth year of the president's Scottish-born mother as well. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversaw fresh drone and missile tests. State media released images showing Kim watching drones in flight and missiles striking targets. Western analysts see Pyongyang's drone push tied to lessons from Russia's war in Ukraine and say they could pose new threats to US allies in the region. Take a look. And as US President Donald Trump wages a war on fentanyl, a new threat is rising south of the border. Mexican drug cartels are cashing in and cocaine is making a deadly comeback. At the center of it all, Nemesio Almencho Oseguera, the ruthless kingpin climbing to the top. Oseguera grew up poor selling avocados. Fueled by America's resurging hunger for cocaine, His empire is expanding, and it's expanding fast. Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera spent decades forging the Jalisco new generation cartel into a deadly transnational empire, strong enough to rewrite Mexico's criminal landscape. With the Sinaloa cartel shattered by infighting and bloodshed, Jalisco seized the throne as the world's deadliest drug powerhouse. As the Trump administration zeroed in on Sinaloa's fentanyl trade, promising to crush the synthetic opioid endemic, it unwittingly cleared the path for Jalisco's explosive rise. Now, fueled by a booming cocaine market, Oseguera stands unchallenged at the top, the undisputed lord of the new drug war. U.S. drug officials say El Mencho is the most powerful drug trafficker operating in the world. Cocaine sold in the U.S. is now cheaper and purer than ever for retail buyers. Since 2019, consumption in the western United States has surged by 154%, while the eastern part of the country has seen a 19% increase over the same period. According to drug testing firm Millennium Health, in contrast, fentanyl use in the U.S. began to decline in mid-2023 and has continued to drop based on data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. For new users, cocaine lacks the stigma associated with fentanyl addiction. Oseguera's cartel transports the addictive powder by the ton from Colombia to Ecuador and then north to Mexico's Pacific coast via speedboats and so-called narco subs. The United States has a $15 million bounty on Oseguera, but he rarely leaves his hideout in the heart of Sierra Madre, a mountain range in Mexico. According to those familiar with the cartel's operations, the group guarding Oseguera, called the Special Force of the High Command, are equipped with RPG-7 heat-seeking shoulder-fired rocket launchers capable of penetrating tanks. Visitors to the drug lord's stronghold are hooded before beginning the 6-hour drive through the terrain littered with landmines. The locations of these pressure-activated explosives are known only to the members of Oseguera's inner circle. Oseguera's power grew after the U.S. pressured Mexico to target the Sinaloa cartel. The group where he began his drug trade career, the Sinaloa cartel, pioneered fentanyl production and smuggling, a major breakthrough that skyrocketed their revenue and fueled a sharp rise in fatal overdoses across the U.S. El Mencho got lucky the second time with Trump administration's crackdown on immigrants. Reports indicate that Trump's campaign to deport undocumented immigrants in the U.S. has diverted federal agents from drug trafficking interdiction efforts. According to reports in Arizona, 2 customs and border protection checkpoints along a key fentanyl smuggling route from Mexico have been left unstaffed, as officers previously assigned there were reassigned to process detained migrants. The Jalisco cartel heavily benefited from this. But the cartel has other sources of income too. El Mencho's cartel acts as a parallel government in parts of Mexico, taxing such goods as tortillas, chicken, cigarettes and beer. The cartel has profited from the flow of migrants heading to the U.S., charging each one thousands of dollars to cross through its controlled territory. Reports quoting U.S. officials say that in recent years, it has also run more than 24 call centers, scamming senior citizens out of hundreds of millions of dollars. Recently, the U.S. forces in Caribbean blew up 2 speedboats. The president alleged they were carrying cocaine and fentanyl from Venezuela to the United States. While fentanyl seizures make headlines, cocaine is quietly reclaiming the streets of the United States. And in the shadows, the Jalisco cartel is turning America's shifting drug habits into its greatest opportunity yet. Now, the digital battleground has gone silent. In Nepal, a generation that once used social media as its weapon of rebellion is now on the run, scrambling for a digital retreat. The police are now looking for the perpetrators of the violence which left Nepal battered and over 70 lives lost. The protesters are deleting their online lives in desperate effort to escape.
A revolution shook the Himalayan kingdom. An elected government fell within days. as the youth took to the streets against rampant corruption. Thousands of young Nepalese, the nation's tech-savvy Gen Z, took to the streets, fueled by a social media ban and years of simmering anger against the corrupt elite. Their mobile phones were their banners, their posts, the front line of a fiery uprising that saw government buildings burn and police firing on crowds. But the digital tide has turned with brutal speed. Nepal's police have launched a massive dragnet, turning the citizens themselves into an army of informants. The police made a public appeal for evidence, and the response was overwhelming. A staggering 30,000 emails, each one a digital dossier of photos and videos capturing the violence. This mountain of evidence has created a chilling new reality. The faces of protesters, once celebrated for their defiance, are now targets in a sweeping criminal investigation.
Real Gen Zs are getting threats, they are being misleaded, and they are also being defamed in social media, so they are going out of the social media, and people who are also the part of the attack, they are also going out of social media because they feel that police will arrest them.
Across the country, thousands of social media profiles are vanishing in a digital retreat as young people desperately scrub away their online presence. A panicked effort to erase their role in the chaos. This is a game of digital cat and mouse, with the police sifting through terabytes of data to hunt down those who engaged in arson, looting, and violence.
Nepal police is reviewing all the photos and videos of the attackers who were involved in vandalism and arson during the protests that took place last week. They say that they have received thousands of emails with photos and video clips of the attackers, and they continue the crackdown on the protesters. This comes at the time when many of the police stations have been attacked and they lack resources. And during the protest, over 13,000 inmates escaped from the prison during the protest, and while only 3,000 have returned. I'm Saloni Murarka reporting from Kathmandu, Nepal for WION.
And in a glaring instance of systemic racism, a UK government report has revealed a shocking statistic. Black women across UK are twice as likely to die in childbirth compared to their white counterparts. The report tabled by the Health and Social Care Committee blames systemic failures in accountability and leadership, stereotypes, bias and racist assumptions for poor outcomes in maternity care for black women. According to a UK-based non-profit, the 3-year rolling average of maternal mortality rate in the UK stood at 28.2 for black women, the highest, followed by 16.7 for Asian and 12.2 for white women. The maternal mortality rate measures the number of maternal deaths per 100,000 women. The report comes after previous findings by the advocacy group 5X More, which found that almost half of pregnant women raised concerns to healthcare professionals during labor. Half of them saying that their concerns were not properly addressed. Now, there has been a shake-up in the rankings of the UK's academic behemoths. For more than 3 decades, Oxford and Cambridge have stood as the undisputed giants of Britain's higher education system, swapping the top positions between them and dominating university rankings at home and abroad. But in a historic shake-up, the latest edition of the Times and Sunday Times Good University Guide, it shows both ancient institutions knocked off the podium for the first time since the guide began in 1993. The London School of Economics and Political Science, LSE, has emerged as the new leader, ranked Britain's best university for the 2nd consecutive year. St Andrews, often seen as Oxbridge's fiercest challenger in recent years, secured 2nd place. The surprise of the table came from Durham University, which surged into 3rd and was also named University of the Year for 2026. Oxford and Cambridge were left sharing fourth place, an unprecedented fall for institutions long considered untouchable. The guide assesses universities on a range of indicators, including research quality, entry standards, teaching excellence, student satisfaction, graduate prospects, and sustainability. Oxford and Cambridge continue to excel in research and global reputation, but weaker scores in areas such as teaching quality and student feedback allowed rivals to overtake them. Analysts say the results reflect not so much a decline in standards as a steady rise in performance across other universities, many of which have invested heavily in improving student experience and career outcomes. Durham's achievement shows how Britain's university landscape is diversifying. Excellence is no longer confined to Oxford and Cambridge. Durham's leap into the top 3 was built on improved student satisfaction ratings, stronger teaching evaluations, and notable success in graduate employability. Its Vice-Chancellor described the recognition as a milestone moment that validated the institution's commitment to balancing world-class research with a supportive learning environment. But it is LSE that holds the crown. LSE's back-to-back victory consolidates its growing stature as a global hub for economics, politics and social sciences. Its cosmopolitan student body, strong research profile and unmatched graduate outcomes in finance, consultancy and international policy helped it secure the crown once again. This shake-up does not mean the Oxbridge has lost its global standing, but it does mark a symbolic break with tradition. For more than 800 years, Oxford and Cambridge have represented the pinnacle of British academia. Their joint fall from the top 3 suggests the old hierarchy is giving way to a more competitive plural system in which other universities can, and increasingly do, challenge the giants. And what if we tell you that Earth has a new quasi-moon? That's right, a tiny asteroid that's been quietly orbiting our planet for decades and no one noticed until now. Let me introduce you to 2025 PN7, our planet's newest cosmic companion. But this isn't a traditional moon. It doesn't orbit Earth directly. It follows an orbit around the Sun that's perfectly in sync with ours. Now one might ask, how in the world did we miss this for so long? Well, here's the kicker. 2025 PN7 is small. It's just about 62 feet across and its faint is only visible with really high-powered telescopes. It's kind of like a shy hidden asteroid that's been quietly out there for about 60 years. And it took scientists a while to finally spot it. But that's not all. This little quasi-moon doesn't stay close by. It swings between 2.8 million and 37 million miles away from Earth. Not exactly next door, but still, it's been with us all this time. So why does this discovery matter? What else is hiding out there in the vastness of space, quietly orbiting alongside our planet? 2025 PN7 might be the smallest of its kind, but it's one of the biggest cosmic surprises we've had in a while, and it's just tip of the iceberg. And in Italy, a Ferrari has set a world record as the fastest car to ever race on the deck of a ship. Driver Fabio Barone broke his own previous record. The event was tied to a charity initiative and cheered on by naval officers, journalists and children with Down syndrome who served as honorary mechanics for the day. Take a look. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. Thank you so much for tuning in. News and updates will continue on the other side on WION World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
एक्टर बनने आया तुम लगा नहीं था कि इतनी एक्टिंग करनी पड़ेगी
As the bats of Bollywood makes waves online, we meet the star actors that make Aryan Khan's directorial debut. Know why Guillermo del Toro is parting with some of his valuable belongings. And decode if couture can really be modern. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North Africa.